So how do you approach those businesses and get them involved in this when nonprofits are out there trying to start the work and do the work? And so we want those local businesses to come along. And I think a lot of them in our own community do to an extent, but you're talking about a lot more engagement and a lot more finances being thrown into the work.
Yeah, I've done a lot. You know, we kind of grew up like everybody else, and
Yes.
you know, I was hitting all my friends and contacts to fund our programs.
Sure.
And we got donations. We did, but not big donations. You know, some $5,000. That's a huge donation. Well, that's pocket change for successful business people. And so it has to do with the size of the vision. If you say we're going to turn a tough neighborhood around, that's what got to my fellow church member, real estate developer, business guy friend. That's what got to him. If he focused his giving on one neighborhood, he said, I'll bet we can make a difference. And so he did. And then as word got out, that his friends wanted to be involved in that. And so that has ended up being an $80 million project. 80.
Wow.
That doesn't come through charitable donations or even foundations. That comes through real estate deals.
Right.
That comes from some of that government money. But one of the difficulties is that our programs tend not to be significant enough in scale or scope that it can actually change the landscape. And so we'll get our donations to run our programs, but we don't change the bedrock reality. That takes bigger vision, bigger dollars, bigger involvement. But this I did find, that there's no better marketing than a significant vision that has some horsepower, some visibility behind it. So, for example, sitting right in the middle of our neighborhood was a Civil War era prison that had been vacated. It had been empty most of the 1900s. It was a blight on our neighborhood. It was a concrete shell, still had bars in the windows, but anything that was destroyable had already been destroyed. And so it was a major source of drug trafficking in our area. It was a blight on the community. There was an Episcopal priest in my neighborhood, and he said, hey, wouldn't it be great to turn that prison into a home for the homeless? Atlanta was just getting aware of its homeless population. And I thought that was just the worst suggestion I had ever heard, putting our most vulnerable citizens in a prison. And he said, no. He said, the architects could really, he said, they do amazing things. So we invited 7 architects who designed the skyline of Atlanta for a visit to this old Civil War era prison that all of them had seen from the expressway. Nobody had been up there. And so we had this, we marched through this old prison, needles and as bad as you can imagine. And these guys were salivating. I don't know if you've ever known an architect or not, but it's a strange breed of people. And they were seeing things that I certainly didn't see. And they said, oh my gosh, this could be remarkable. This could be amazing. So about 2 hours into this exploration, I said, could it ever be made to feel warm and hospitable? He said, oh, yes. So they said, what kind of a budget are we working with here? And I said, well, money really isn't the issue. I said, but you need to know we've got in excess of $3,000 in the bank. And they reacted pretty much the way you're reacting. And I said, oh, I see you guys haven't built anything by faith before, have you? And they assured me that they hadn't. And I said, well, look, if you commit your God-given abilities to the design work on this, I'll bet we've raised a couple $100,000 right here today. And they said, we'll get back to you on that. I learned over the next couple of weeks a really important insight that when the God of creation drops a vision down into the soil of the human spirit, it takes on a life of its own. It heats up, it pushes itself up to the conscious attention of the bear, and you can't get away from it. And that's what happened to those 7 architects. It was a kernel of vision that it just took off. And we reconvened in 2 weeks, and they said, we'll do all the design work, pro bono. But we've got to have a very friendly relationship with the general contractor. You know, you can't draw, none of this stuff is standard code. He said, you can't draw enough pictures. He said, we got to have a very friendly relationship. Who's your general contractor? They said. I said, well, who do you know? Well, they knew them all. They knew all the commercial contractors that had built the skyline of Atlanta. And so I said, share your vision with them. And so they cleared out the old warden's office and put Coleman lanterns along the hall and invited the 12 major commercial contractors in Atlanta for breakfast in the warden's office, and got one of our gourmet restaurateurs to come in and do a gourmet breakfast. And over in the corner with 2 Coleman lanterns on either side was this great big full-color rendering of what this old prison could look like. And they said, we're doing all the design work, how about you guys build it? And those 12 contractors locked arms and said, we'll take it on. And they divided it up 12 ways. They went out after all their subcontractors and suppliers. The most complex, convoluted construction project that you can ever imagine. Took them more than a year to do it. But I want to tell you, the day we opened the doors for 67 fully furnished loft apartments, there wasn't a penny of debt on the place. Wow. It had been taken off the tax rolls, which meant folks moving in were free from that awful choice of either having to pay rent or buy groceries. Mm-hmm. They could do it both because we could structure the rent very affordably. I learned that the size, sexiness of the vision draws visionary leaders around it. Those are the same folks that will not come down and work with a kid. Yeah. Or paint a house. They want to change history. Yeah. And the good news is we're on the cusp of a historical change. And when you come up with new paradigms of service, that's news. Absolutely. And if you want to get the media involved in this, instead of waiting until they have some nasty story to tell about how your ministry went wrong, bring them in to see a whole new paradigm of ministries and how this is reshaping the whole charity industry in our city. And we're on the cutting edge of this. Yeah. That'll get some media coverage.